The silent arrival. The Zalari Empire stretched across 300 star systems, their crystalline ships reflecting the light of conquered suns like deadly prisms in the void. For 3,000 years they had dominated this section of the galaxy, their technology unmatched, their warriors undefeated. Today marked their 500th conquered system, and Supreme Overlord Zarkon stood aboard his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching as another civilization bent its knee. The Yorvan homeworld burned below, its defenders scattered, its fleets reduced to drifting debris. Zarkon's forearms crossed in satisfaction, his bioluminescent skin pulsing with colors of triumph. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived, and they had carried that philosophy to the stars. The weak served, the strong ruled. It was the natural order of the universe. Supreme Overlord, his tactical officer interrupted, her voice carrying a note of confusion. We're detecting unusual gravitational readings from Sector 779. Zarkon turned, his compound eyes focusing on the officer. Define unusual. The readings are inconsistent, as if space itself is rippling, but our sensors can't identify the source. Before Zarkon could respond, every alarm on the bridge erupted simultaneously. The lights flickered, then stabilized. Through the viewport, stars seemed to shimmer and dance in patterns that defied physics. Then they appeared, not dramatically, not with flashing lights or grand announcements. One moment empty space, the next 12 vessels hung motionless in the void, arranged in perfect formation around the Zalari fleet. They were unlike anything in the Imperial database. Dark as the space between stars, their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons ports, no engine signatures, no energy readings that made sense. They simply existed where they hadn't before. Commander Caney Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UES Revenant, flagship of humanity's 12th Ghost Fleet. His gray eyes studied the tactical display with the patience of a predator who knew the hunt was already over. Around him, his crew worked in practiced silence, their neural interfaces allowing them to communicate without words, to coordinate without delays, to think as one unified organism. Humanity had watched from the shadows for 50 years. They had studied every major galactic power, learned their strengths, catalogued their weaknesses. While other species announced themselves with fanfare and diplomacy, humans had done what they did best. They adapted. They prepared. They waited. The Zalari Empire had finally crossed the line. The Yorvan people had been under humanity's secret protection, a species that reminded them too much of Earth's dolphins to ignore. Intelligent, peaceful, creative. Now they burned because they had refused to surrender their freedom. Sir, Lieutenant Sarah Chen spoke aloud. Unusual for their silent operations. The Zalari are attempting to scan us. Let them try, Mitchell replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute confidence. They'll find exactly what we want them to find. The Ghost Fleet's hulls were covered in a material humanity had developed after discovering an abandoned precursor station near Proxima Centauri. It bent space-time around the ships in subtle ways, making them appear to be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Sensors would report contradictory data. Visual confirmation would be uncertain. The enemy would doubt their own eyes. On the Eternal Dominion, chaos reigned. Every attempt to target the mysterious vessels failed. Weapons couldn't achieve lock. Sensors provided different data with each sweep. One moment the ships appeared massive, the next they seemed no larger than shuttles. Their positions shifted without movement, existing in multiple places at once. Open communications, Zarkon roared. I want to know who dares to challenge the Zalari Empire. The main screen activated, revealing a human face. Commander Mitchell appeared calm, almost bored. To the Zalari, who had never encountered humans before, he might have seemed unremarkable. Bipedal, soft-skinned, no natural weapons or armor. But there was something in those gray eyes that made Zarkon's instincts scream danger. Supreme Overlord Zarkon, Mitchell began, his tone conversational. I'm Commander Mitchell of the United Earthship Revenant. We need to discuss your recent activities in this sector. Zarkon's bioluminescence flared red with rage. You dare address me as an equal? Your pathetic fleet is surrounded by 300 of my finest warships. Identify your species and your origin, and I might make your death swift. Mitchell's expression didn't change. We're humans. As for our origin, that's not really important right now. What matters is that you've destroyed a civilization under our protection. That's problematic. The Supreme Overlord laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Protection? The Yorvan are conquered. They are nothing. And you, humans, are nothing. I've never even heard of your species. That was intentional, Mitchell replied. We've found it's better to observe before introducing ourselves. You've been watching for 300 years, building, learning, preparing. He paused, letting the words sink in. Did you know your empire has 17 critical weaknesses in its infrastructure? Your FTL communication network has a fascinating vulnerability in its quantum encryption. Your food production relies on 43 agricultural worlds, all using the same genetically modified crops that would be remarkably susceptible to a targeted biological agent. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent.
Zarkon's forearms slowly uncrossed. Mitchell continued.
Your homeworld's defense grid operates on a rotating frequency pattern that repeats every 72 hours. Your military academies train your officers to think in traditional three-dimensional combat patterns, making them predictable. Your species' natural bioluminescence makes your soldiers visible to infrared sensors, even through your adaptive camouflage. Impossible, Zarkon whispered. Our intelligence network would have detected your surveillance. Your intelligence network detected exactly what we wanted it to detect, Mitchell said simply. Nothing. Ambassador Thexar, the Zalari's most skilled diplomat, stepped forward. Where Zarkon ruled through strength, Thexar had risen through cunning. Commander Mitchell, he said smoothly, his skin shifting to calming blue patterns. Surely we can reach an understanding. The galaxy is vast. There's room for both our civilizations to prosper. Mitchell nodded slowly. I agree. Which is why we're giving you this opportunity. Withdraw from your van space. Return any survivors you've taken. Pay reparations for the damage you've caused. Do this and we can coexist peacefully. Zarkon's rage returned. The Zalari Empire does not negotiate with unknown powers. You have 12 ships against our 300.
This is madness.
12 ships that appeared inside your defensive perimeter without detection, Mitchell reminded him. 12 ships your sensors can't properly identify. 12 ships that have been watching you for who knows how long. He leaned forward slightly. Would you like a demonstration of what 12 human ships can do? Without waiting for an answer, Mitchell nodded to his crew. What happened next would be debated by military historians for centuries. The human ships didn't move in any conventional sense. They flickered. Reality seemed to stutter around them. One moment they were in formation, the next they were scattered throughout the Zalari fleet. A battlecruiser's shield suddenly reversed polarity, crushing its own hull. A destroyer's weapons fired backward into its sister ship. Navigation systems across the fleet began displaying impossible coordinates, some showing positions inside stars, others in dimensions that didn't exist. It wasn't an attack in any traditional sense. It was a fundamental disruption of the technologies the Zalari depended upon. Every advantage they had cultivated over 3 millennia suddenly became a liability. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The human ships were back in their original formation as if they had never moved. That was 1% of our capability, Mitchell said quietly. We call it adaptive warfare. We don't just fight you. We turn your own strengths against you. Your ships are marvels of engineering, but engineering based on principles we've learned to exploit. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, warnings flashed across every screen. 15 ships reported critical systems failures. 3 were venting atmosphere. None had been directly fired upon. Zarkon's certainty crumbled. For the first time in his life, he faced something the Zalari Empire couldn't simply overwhelm with superior firepower. These humans hadn't challenged them to a battle. They had demonstrated that the very concept of battle had changed. The reckoning. The silence stretched across the void like a held breath. On 300 Zalari ships, warriors who had never known defeat struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. Their instruments insisted nothing had happened, yet the evidence of their own eyes said otherwise. 15 damaged vessels drifted among them, wounded by impossibility itself. Supreme Overlord Zarkon stood motionless, his bioluminescence flickering between colors as his mind raced. Pride warred with pragmatism, 3,000 years of supremacy against the cold reality before him. These humans had shown barely a fraction of their power, yet they had crippled his fleet's confidence more effectively than any conventional weapon. Supreme Overlord, his weapons master spoke carefully. Awaiting your orders, the words hung in the air. Everyone knew what those orders should be. The Zalari way was to attack, to overwhelm, to conquer. But attacking an enemy that could turn your own technology against you was like striking at smoke with a sword made of mist. All ships, Zarkon commanded, his voice carrying the authority of his position despite his inner turmoil. Initiate attack pattern Omega-7. Show these humans the price of challenging the Zalari Empire. Space erupted in violence. 300 ships opened fire simultaneously, their crystalline weapons arrays releasing energy beams that could crack moons, missiles that could pierce the strongest shields, and gravitational distortions that could tear vessels apart at the molecular level. The barrage was beautiful in its terrible synchronization, a dance of destruction that had ended 100 civilizations. The human ships didn't move. They didn't raise shields. They simply existed differently. The energy beams curved around them as if space itself had been twisted. Missiles lost their targeting data and spiraled off into the void. Gravitational weapons found no mass to grip, as if the human vessels weren't truly there. It was like attacking a reflection on water, the image clear but ultimately intangible. Commander Mitchell watched the display with an expression that might have been disappointment. Lieutenant Chen, initiate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 confirmed, sir. Across the Zalari fleet, something changed. It started small. A warrior here, an officer there, began to hear whispers. Not through their communication systems, but inside their minds. The whispers spoke in perfect Zalari, in voices that sounded like their own thoughts. You cannot win. They've been watching for 300 years. How many other human fleets are hidden among your worlds? Your empire is already defeated. You just don't know it yet. Psychological warfare was not unknown in galactic combat, but this was different. The whispers knew things. Personal things. They mentioned names of loved ones, recalled private memories, quoted from secret reports that had never left secured channels. On the bridge of a Zalari destroyer, Captain Vixara suddenly screamed, tearing at her head. They're inside. They're inside my thoughts. Others across the fleet reported similar experiences. Paranoia spread like wildfire. If the humans could read their minds, know their secrets, what else could they do? The truth was both simpler and more complex than telepathy. The Ghost Fleet's 50 years of observation had included deploying microscopic surveillance drones throughout Zalari space. Quantum processors had analyzed every communication, every pattern of behavior, every cultural nuance. Artificial intelligences had built psychological profiles of every significant military figure. The whispers were precisely crafted for maximum impact, delivered through technologies that bypassed traditional defenses. It was warfare evolved beyond violence, targeting the mind rather than the body. Ceasefire, Zarkon roared, watching his fleet descend into chaos. Some ships were firing on empty space, chasing sensor ghosts. Others had stopped responding entirely, their crews paralyzed by fear or confusion. All ships, cease fire! The barrage stopped, leaving only the drifting debris of missiles and the fading glow of energy dissipating in vacuum. The human ships remained exactly where they had been, untouched, unchanging. Commander Mitchell, Zarkon spoke through gritted teeth. What are you? Mitchell's image reappeared on the screen. Behind him, the human bridge crew worked with an efficiency that seemed almost mechanical. No wasted movement, no unnecessary communication. They were unified in purpose in a way that made the Zalari's rigid hierarchy look chaotic by comparison. We're what humanity became when we reached the stars and found them full of empires like yours, Mitchell replied. We learned that in a galaxy where might makes right, the greatest might isn't always the most obvious. While you built bigger ships, we learned to make space itself our weapon. While you conquered worlds, we learned to become invisible. While you counted your victories, we studied your defeats. But why? Ambassador Thexar interjected, his diplomatic mind seeking understanding. Why remain hidden? Why reveal yourselves now? Because we made a choice, Mitchell said. When humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel, we had a decision to make. We could announce ourselves, join the galactic community, probably end up conquered or absorbed by a power like yours, or we could do what humans have always done. We could adapt, we could learn, we could become something new. He gestured to something off-screen and new images appeared. Hundreds of worlds, thriving civilizations, species the Zalari had never seen. For 50 years we've been building a different kind of empire. Not one based on conquest but on protection. Species that choose freedom over submission, find sanctuary in human space. Civilizations threatened by powers like yours discover they have silent guardians, The implications hit Zarkon like a physical blow. How many? How many ships do you have? Enough, Mitchell replied simply. The 12th Ghost Fleet is one of many. We have ships in every major system in this quadrant, watching, waiting, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That's impossible, Zarkon protested. The resources required, the coordination, would be impossible for a conventional empire, Mitchell agreed. But we're not conventional. Every human ship operates independently, yet in perfect synchronization through quantum entanglement networks. Our crews are enhanced with neural interfaces that allow thought-speed communication. Our AI systems predict probabilities across millions of scenarios simultaneously. We don't need supply lines because our ships can harvest resources from dead space. We don't need bases because space itself is our home. On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing, one by one like stars emerging at dusk. Ghost Fleet ships revealing themselves throughout Zalari space, not attacking, not threatening, simply making their presence known. 10, 50, 100, more. They had been there all along. Station Omega-7 is requesting immediate assistance, Zarkon's communications officer reported, voice trembling. They report human ships have appeared in orbit. Omega-7 was the Empire's primary shipyard, hidden in a nebula thought unnavigable. If the humans were there, all our strategic positions, Zarkon said slowly. You know them all. Every single one, Mitchell confirmed. Your hidden bases, your secret weapons projects, your emergency protocols. We know about the planet killer you're building in the Nexus system. We know about the biological weapons laboratory on Craxus Beta. We know about the slave processing centers you hide from the Galactic Council. Each revelation was another blow to the Zalari's certainty. Their empire, built on strength and secrecy, stood naked before an enemy that had been watching from the beginning. So what now? Zarkon asked, his voice hollow. Do you destroy us? Take our empire for your own? Mitchell shook his head. That's thinking like a Zalari. We don't want your empire. We want you to change. Release the Yorvan survivors. Withdraw from their space. End your expansion through conquest. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us, but not if you insist on taking it all. And if we refuse, then every advantage you've built over 3,000 years becomes a weakness we can exploit. Your technology fails. Your supply lines collapse. Your subject races receive mysterious support for rebellion. Your empire doesn't fall in glorious battle. It simply stops working. The Ghost Fleet had demonstrated they could do exactly that, not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding. They had turned the very concept of warfare into something the Zalari couldn't fight. I need time, Zarkon said finally, to consult with the Imperial Council. You have 1 hour, Mitchell replied. The same time we gave you before. Use it wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the Zalari fleet floating in space with their invisible watchers. On every ship, warriors and officers struggled to process what they had witnessed. Their entire worldview, built on the assumption of Zalari superiority, had been shattered in minutes. But perhaps the most unsettling part was the humans' restraint. They could have destroyed the fleet, could have demonstrated overwhelming force. Instead, they had shown just enough power to make their point, coupled with an intimate knowledge of Zalari weaknesses that made resistance futile. It was, in its own way, more terrifying than any weapon. The hour passed in heated debate aboard the Eternal Dominion. Some advocated for continued resistance, arguing that death was preferable to submission. Others, led by Ambassador Thexar, argued for pragmatism. The humans weren't demanding surrender, merely coexistence. The Empire could survive, even thrive, without conquest. When Commander Mitchell's image reappeared, Zarkon had reached his decision. The Zalari Empire accepts your terms, he said, each word tasting of ash. We will withdraw from Yorvan space and return any survivors. But know this, human, this is not over. We will adapt. We will learn. And one day, Mitchell interrupted gently, you might understand that we're not your enemies. We're what you could become if you chose protection over domination. The offer stands, Supreme Overlord. The galaxy is changing. The question is whether you'll change with it or be left behind. The Ghost Fleet began to fade, their hulls becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone. Only the Revenant remained, hanging in space like a promise and a warning combined. Welcome to the new galactic order, Mitchell said finally. We'll be watching. Then it too was gone, leaving 300 Zalari ships alone in space with the echo of everything they thought they knew crumbling around them. The Empire would survive, but it would never be the same. The humans had arrived not with conquest, but with a simple message. The age of unchecked empires was over. Humanity had come to the stars not as conquerors, but as guardians, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, as the Zalari withdrew and the Yorvan began to rebuild, whispers spread throughout known space. Stories of the ghost fleets, the invisible protectors, the humans who had watched and waited and chosen the perfect moment to reveal themselves. Some called them heroes. Others called them a new kind of threat. But all agreed on one thing. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy and nothing would ever be the same again. End of story.